Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second game of my run in the May monthly tournament. And the first one was a close one against Homer. So we're in the second game against Homer on a map that is called Gora Calvaria. Homer got the first ban out of the four maps we got. He banned Tannenberg, the map I actually wanted to play on, because he knew that I played a bit more Tannenberg than he did. So I decided on picking Gora Calvaria because the other maps were Krupa and Shadrin, and I didn't want to play Shadrin, and Krupa is horrible, and Gora Calvaria is actually a map I'm good at, and I also enjoy. I know a lot of people out there hate it, but I really enjoy this map, especially since the flag rework. And then we went on to the bans, and just in the first game, he picked Axis, I got allies, and he banned the 6 divisions he knew I had on top of my division skill list. So 44th, 26 guards, and 97th, and then task force 45, 2nd infantry, and 8th Indian. And I banned him his 28th vehicle and 78th storm and a couple of other good divisions for this map. 26th panzer once more, I think. 17th SS obviously. And so he picked division first this time, picking Raima Rapana, and I knew, okay, that's a lot of air spam, and that's a lot of good infantry, and so I went on to find a division that can handle that. And I ended up with the Italians, because you don't have to worry about tanks too much, so a good anti-tank tank is not important. The only thing you fight against is T-26s. So Shermans are absolutely mighty fine, and so are in the AT tab the 47mm anti-tank guns. And you get infantry that can deal with your carries, and especially you get a lot of artillery. And this map obviously is all about the artillery. It's balanced versus balanced. And here we go. Lancia Flame moving in into the south. Para del Salto, Gustatory Para, the 13-man flame score squadron with Radas. But Germans move into the middle. And yeah, I didn't want it to go aggressive at the beginning. I wanted to go for a defensive setup, as I already brought in 2 artillery pieces to be used on the north if I spot anything there. Getting my radio forward as well. But my opponent wanted to go aggressive. Homer this time decided to go for a rush over this bridge. I would say this is a good bridge to try to throw your enemy off guard on. Often you see it pushes down here, and that's where I put most of my forces, because I expected a push down here with your carries in the forest. But he wanted to be wild. Luckily, my 47mm got in position, and I realized what was happening quite early on. So I started to move my forces over here, as Alpini Esplorante moving over there, Shermans moving over there. Artillery will open fire onto this terrain as well, but there's still a lot of units coming in here. So I also bought a fighter from the get-go because I feared a lot of enemy air spam from the get-go as well, because we saw a lot of airplay at the beginning of last game. So as there was no airplanes in the air, I rather decided to use it as a strafer or an Ariete bomber because I needed fast reaction. Infantry here got overrun. Shermans had to be called in. Ariete sadly didn't get the bombing run off, as I should have focused it on another unit first. So I had to retarget. Artillery now coming in, trying to hit the bridgehead, whilst my Shermans tried to pin down the enemy forces. Lancia Flame will try to come up to maybe do some flamethrower hits on this, but there is Tanko Tayuntas with Panzerschrecks, and there is 3 BA-10s, of which I have to be careful. Lancia Flame under attack. Ariete got its bombs off, and as you can see, the artillery here pretty effective, as we got radio on this, thanks to the Esploratori, or Esplorante. And so we get good hits here with the artillery, pinning down a lot of the infantry. So the enemy's push here, so far, not working out too well. But I-153 anti-tank rocket plane already on the battlefield to try to deal with my Shermans. And obviously my Shermans are the only thing that holds this together currently. Also, Vekotin over here already, double 20mm, which is pretty efficient. So I don't want to fly into that, whilst my Shermans keep on holding over here. Lancia Flame going in, T-26 on the way. Panzerschreck down in the bottom as well. And yeah, I realized I couldn't catch that there. So I disengaged once more with my fighter. 20mm coming up to try to keep this at bay. Whilst my enemy got a fighter as well. Lancia Flame down here in the south, sitting in the forest. And now I send in the C-205. But I wanted to dodge this. But I flew a bit too close to the Vecotine. And I also flew a bit too close to the I-153. Really good call in for this behind me. So I lost my fighter, which was a big investment here at the beginning. And I only had the second one in A phase. I knew I would have to deal with a lot of airplanes, so I had the second card of fighters with Spitfires in B phase. But in A phase, that's all I got. And once more, I have a division with not as much AA. You only got 20mm. These are the best 20mm in game, at least. Like single barrel 20mm. Vecotine's obviously better, but these are dual barrels. So also pretty cheap for dual barrels. But the Italian 20mm are the best of the normal 20mm. And we still keep artillery firing onto this bridgehead. So the infantry here of his is in a bit of a bad spot. So he decided to move them over down to the south, whilst keeping the units up here to try to stop me from taking it easily. As this is shallow water, movement over here is possible. I-153 tried to come in. 20mm at least kept it somewhat inaccurate, so the Sherman survived this barrage. Meanwhile, though, more and more light armor of my opponent in the south. At least I got one anti-tank gun in here, but one anti-tank gun versus 5 vehicles is obviously not the easiest fight. Second one, though, coming up, as I realized there would be a lot of stuff down here. And I would at least get one BA-10. Meanwhile, though, I lost another plane, and this was a big one. Really big mess up. Now already 2 planes down, as a person who says he has one of the best air micros in the game. That's obviously not what you want to do if you want to rely on airplane as much as I do in my games. Losing 2 planes like this is a big one. Also, the artillery wars have begun. As you can see, Homer has brought out the 83mm artillery pieces for counter battery against my Obitses. So, artillery war officially has started, but another 47mm is around here, trying to find a kill onto this T-26. Will get a penetration in already, and with its high rate of fire, it can kill it off before the T-26 can react. Gustatori Power sadly down here got stuck, so they didn't really retreat, they just got stuck there and eliminated, which was a bit painful. But we at least eliminated the bridgehead over here, so a couple of units were able to escape to the forest over here, still keeping Homer the 1311. And this map, getting a tick is not that easy. So once you got a tick on your enemy, the enemy first has to cross the river to get it back on you. So with a time limit, I think this map is absolutely fine. Like, I can see why people in ranked don't like this map too much, but as soon as you have a time limit at hand, pushing on this map is getting rewarded. And the enemy has to push you back eventually to get back onto you to get that 1311 later. So really, trying to get an early advantage here in points, maybe on cost of taking a couple bad trades, can be still a good idea if you think you can hold on later with a bit less units. Yes, so far, Homer did not trade that well on the ground, obviously. Lost a lot of BA-10s, but obviously the push also could have gone better if I wouldn't have had the Shermans right next to it. But I kind of considered that he would start to rush me like this, as he doesn't quite have the long-range fighting capabilities that I do with Syl, so he might want to get an early advantage with his better or like more cheaply available CQC infantry and so on. So as I said, I first expected it to come down here. That was a bit of a surprise, but luckily I was still able to manage it somewhat. So the 1311 still taking me down. 47mm now moving into the north. Whilst on the other side we have Westrovekis and Lattis. 75mm sitting around here as well. And my next Obitze gets counter batteried. The one in the north luckily didn't got any damage. As you can see, the 83mm is not the most accurate unit, and combined with mediocre damage, it takes a while for them to get some kills in counter battery. Else I got more Lancia Flammes and so on out to try to finally take back this flag, because I knew any tick here that I receive will hurt me in the long run, because I somehow have to get back to the other side of the river to get the tick onto my opponent, and that wouldn't be easy. I would need some strategy to find a 1311 eventually, and I don't want to be pressured too much in finding it too early on, because I fall too far behind in points at the beginning. Now my counter battery started here onto the 83mm. Luckily my Obitze got out with only slight damage. That's down here. The back and forth started with the infantry. The carries versus Fuciliaries, both not being the best long-range firepower units. Fuciliaries slightly better though, as one of the big issues of the Finnish is that they don't have a lot of LMGs. They rely on a lot of SMGs, as they have the best SMG in the game with the Suomi, and a lot of their squads have more than one. And they also have decent semi-automatic rifles, so in CQC they're amazing, and short-range fights they're decent. But obviously, yeah, everything below 150 is really where they shine, whilst everything above 500 is basically undoable for them. Their HMG is also not the best. They got a couple of these old Maxims, which are decent, but also don't have the longest range, and so on. Meanwhile, a Hawk over here this time went a bit too deep, so I finally got my first air kill here in retaliation, as this will not make it out alive. See, 205 is good enough to follow that up, and the 20mm, as I said, is a good 20mm, so Hawk goes down. See, 205 is a good fighter. It's pretty cheap, with only 100 points, and it has decent fire output, and it is pretty maneuverable. We got back to a 12-12 here, but there's still infantry in here. Gustatory Powers trying to close in here, together with the L35. L35 goes too close though, gets hit by the Panzerfaust, which was a stupid mistake. Meanwhile, two 153s coming in. 20mm tries to prevent it, but the second 20mm is too far in the rear, so Sherman gets the hit. Doesn't go down though, as once more the front one does get stressed out, so it doesn't hit perfectly. And this was the Sherman he hit before. So now both Shermans of mine are damaged, but none of them is dead, which is quite fortunate. Still having them both alive, because dealing with them with their ground units is not easy for Raima Rapana. Raima Rapana really not having that many long-range capabilities against tanks. They get a couple of Pak 40s, and T-26s, if they get close enough, can deal some damage maybe against Shermans as well, but they got to get really close. Meanwhile, down here we have Shermans, we have 47mm, and we have some Gustatoris with TNTs, instead of some L35s. But at the same time, we get pressured over here. Homer trying to get back to the 1311, trying to get the tick on, so that I will be heavily pressured in the late game, in this best of two. As we go into B phase though, I decided to get more of my artillery out to really make it an artillery fest, because that's one of the ways how the Italians can win the war, because they only cost 50 points and they have radio, so as long as you have radio units on the front line, you can be really accurate. The 75mm, as you can see, also not doing much in counter battery. I used them here. Also now they also don't really hit, as Homer moved them away as well, but yeah, they dealt as little damage as he dealt to me. But there are bigger guns out on Homer's side now, so gotta be more careful. And I will consider getting bigger guns out soon as well. Tricycle for radio up here, so my artillery can be more deadly over this. E2 coming around, Spitfire getting called in, trying to deal with the dough, and now with the P2. But P2 is pretty fast, so it will be tough to try to catch up there, or it teleports out. Spitfire is closing in, but maybe called in a bit too late, as the P2 should be able to make it out eventually. Spitfire gets pretty close, and there we go. P2 gets out just before the Spitfire can open up fire. Katsu Pioneers and Yakaris coming in over here. Arkadusti joining in as well. But Homer got back to 1311, putting me under more pressure. Lost like 1/5 of my hit points so far. So we'll have to get that back later. Arkadusti coming in the north, having 2 LMGs. They outtrade most of the enemy's infantry in the longer fights. He got Ratsuvekis with 1 LMG, but the Lati is not an amazing one. Meanwhile, Spitfire gets another fighter kill, so air is now even in kills, which was really good to see. But I had to invest into another Spitfire. This is my fourth fighter board already in this game. Though on this map, you can take that investment because yeah, you can hold the bridges with less forces than you usually have to have around your front line. Meanwhile, my insane amount of Obitzes tries to get a kill onto the 122mm, but a lot of counter battery coming in onto me as well. And as you can see, Obitzes as long range counter battery not the most efficient, but they at least keep the enemy busy. But the enemy is also using their artillery to try to kill off one of my Obitzes. Coming in with a lot of fire here. Germans rolling in. T-205 Veltro being called in the north in case any enemies get called in over there as well. Whilst Sissies with Kev engage us over here. Arkadusti though trying to get them killed, but I lost a lot of L3s here. So sadly they're really, luckily they're really cheap. L335 only costing 10 points, being able to capture stuff, being able to deal with infantry that doesn't have any AT. Over time, 2 Bredas can dish out some damage, so it's a solid fire support unit as well for your infantry fights, like in light forest and so on. I usually like them quite a bit. Meanwhile though, my artillery here gets pinned down, has to retreat, so the artillery war is going on big time. Another 83mm being called in. So I decided to bring in big guns as well. 105mm that dish out a bit more damage, that might be a bit better in killing off the enemy, not just stressing them out and pinning them down, which is helpful to keep them from killing you. But if you actually want to kill them, you gotta get some bigger guns as well in the counter battery war. And these are also not that expensive. The 105mm cost only 80 points. Meanwhile though, good usage of smoke on my enemy side was a bit annoying. Ariete trying to come in with a bombing run, but getting pushed back by the Beko team. Really solid A for 60 points. Pretty capable. Luckily Ariete has medium hit points though, so it doesn't go down there. Gustatoris with Berettas able to deal with 1 TNT unit. Next TNT flies though. So let's see Pioneer go down. Bombing hit of the Blenheim set, luckily not on point. And we are back to a 12-12. But a couple of 105mm start to come out in the rear. Obitzes hitting up in the top. Arkadusti trying to get me a 13-11, but Sissies, obviously, with their SVT 40 and their 1000m Sampo L LMG, or GPMG. I actually have no clue what GPMG stands for. If you know it, let me know it. Gets me pinned down here. And my Arkadusti will get shredded. Germans on the way though, and there is only one Pak 38 to stop me. Currently on this position. So goal is to get to a 13-11 to get the take back on Homer. Artillery trying to help out. As you can see, it's pretty accurate. And if it gets hit with radio, it's pretty deadly. But not as much on counter battery duty. For counter battery duty though, we now have the 105mm, and they already did some damage to the 122mm. So my opponent has to be careful here. So obviously, so do I. As artillery is also flying over to my side. But luckily to the stress on the enemy's artillery, it's not that accurate. Overall, 122mm has an issue with accuracy, especially as it doesn't have radio, so it's not even accurate on the close shot, but it also has a pretty fast spread when it attacks the rear. This time though, it connects, so artillery first blood in the artillery war. I think it goes to my opponent. Or did I kill? I might have killed a unit over here. think there was an artillery gun over there, so might be 1-1 at this stage. The artillery war for sure is hot, as both sides now have big guns, 2 each. His having a bit more damage, mine having a bit better accuracy, if I remember correctly. Trying to really hit that 122mm. Meanwhile, in the south, air war is continuing. Spitfire though, in trouble, as Vekotine and a 40mm are firing upon it. So Spitfire trying to get out. Planheim will get out for sure. 20mm on the ground, not quite capable of killing it off. Spitfire will make it out alive for now as well. I was really worried about that one. Didn't want to lose another fighter. Meanwhile, holding out here for now against Homer. So not going down to 11-13 for now. But still having to do a lot of work to get closer. And I lost a lot of units down here. So really the forest fight, absolute war of attrition. Lancia Flamet trying to move forward. Trying to hit the Ratsuvekis. But there will be Tanko Junta in the rear, so I had to be careful. Ratsuveki though getting hit hard. Arkaduski now being able to deal some damage there. Whilst the Lancia Flame continues throwing flames on it. More at 5mm. Now coming in with some counter battery again. Yes, I got another one in the north. But one of mine died over here. So only down to 2 once more. So as you can see, really the artillery war here was bloody. A lot of micro went into finding enemy guns and trying to hit them. Meanwhile, Alpini Commando and Comandossi coming in for the north. Comandossi because they bring in a half-track, which can be quite helpful here as well. One of my Shermans did bite the dust versus the PaK-38. Parakadusti trying to push over, but it's 1 Parakadusti versus 11 Ratsuvekis, so might not be the best engagement. Whilst counter batteries flying both directions. 155mm now coming in for my opponent, so really the investment in artillery is insane on both sides. Whilst more Pardo Assalto tried to move into the south. And I tried to come up with a plan how to deal with the northern situation. 122mm over here on the fire. Whilst I 153s tried to come in for my Sherman, but Veltro was around. So I mismicroed that one heavily. I could have just went for the I-153s. Instead, took me a bit longer and I lost the Sherman. Had another one luckily coming up. But I could have easily shut down the first E-153 with the Veltro and then maybe used the Spitfire to kill off the second one. Was for sure a misplay, but at least I got one in the end. But could have done the air micro there for sure better than what I did. Trying to get a 1311 now here, but there is reinforcements for my opponent as well. And Homer once more has me down in points. Luckily not as much as in game number 1, as there was not an OP off map coming in. But I also didn't have PTRS this time in his rear to completely wreak havoc, so my comeback had to come from honest fighting on the front, or at least lopping explosives with artillery on top. Whilst I was able to get close to a 1311 here, but the infantry just came in time to keep me at a 1212. Meanwhile, Shermans and sniper units engaging the sissies in the north. Trying to finally find the kill there. Sherman firing one more time. Gets the kill. Whilst artillery is still trying to do some counter batterying. As more and more artillery pieces hit the front line. On my side as well, another 105mm, 2 more in the south, so really heavy artillery on both sides now. Blenheim coming in with some good bombs. So 12-12 will be kept for now, as I can't push deeper into the south with my Pardo Assalto. Obviously, as I lost the Lancia Flame now. Enemy pretty close on maybe taking this again, though I at least reduced the numbers of these infantry units quite well as well. Finally, got a connection on the 122mm. I'll stay continuously counter battle me as well though. And both sides will take some casualties here. I realized there was not much AA last time I checked up in the north. There is a 40mm Bofors now, so it changed a bit. Baltimore trying to find the 122mm. Dropped one bomb. Won't be able to find it though, as it disengaged. Also, bombs would have dropped way too far forward. It didn't drop all its bombs. Sherman keeps on pushing on its sissy though, and I went up to 1410. Starting to take down Homer and trying to get closer to evening out the situation and then going ahead from there. So this flag obviously still close. Homer also close to getting the flag in the south. Whilst more Shermans roll in. Artillery war continues heavily. By the way, I have 10 cards of supply trucks in this deck because I knew it would be a long game most likely with balanced versus balanced, and I knew artillery would play a big role. And sadly, one of the issues with the Italians, with the allied Italians, is that you can't use any supply trucks as transport for your artillery. So you have to buy extra cards in the support tab, which is a bit unfortunate, but that's how it goes. And if you want artillery spam, you gotta get the supply cards. So it made my artillery spam a bit more expensive card-wise than I wanted it to be. So I had to take out some infantry support weapons to fit in more supply trucks. But 105mm now on heavy counter battery duty. But at the meantime, my opponent also brought in a heck of a lot of artillery pieces. Luckily though, really lucky connection there with my 105mm. Going really deep and getting 2 hits in a row on the 155mm with the first couple of shots. Meaning that I got one more cleaned out there. Absolutely lucky connection there. As you can see, the others landed way off next couple of shots. So that was RNG really playing in my favor. Whilst I started to set up a push over here, as the goal was to get these 3 flags and get a 59. Because with 1311 it would still take me quite a while to even catch up. And also with 1311 always the enemy is close to at least evening it out to a 12-12 down here. Whilst with 15-9 obviously that would be harder. And I felt like I was about to get the forces around in the north that I needed for that. As there was an anti-tank gun around here. Your carries getting caught as well by Shermans, and my opponent just didn't quite have a counter to Shermans anymore. As I got more and more AA. Something that got targeted now by artillery though. Whilst my artillery, as you can see, some guns, like it's really a lot of micro to keep all the artillery guns working, even with smart orders. In 1v1, as soon as you get this many artillery guns, it's quite a lot of work. So yeah, also thank God for smart orders in these. If I would have to look out for each small little flash and then try to find it instead of just the somewhat round area where they are supposed to be, it would have been such a busy work. Counter fire or defensive fire, smart order there, really helpful. Counter battery on a couple of these units as well. Something that my opponent maybe didn't do as much. No. Lots of manual work here. Well, here not. This, I guess, is on counter battery. So, yeah, smart orders on my enemy side as well. But maybe could have used a couple more to make it a bit more efficient. Take a bit less micro in this stage. Meanwhile, Stackhounds, trying to follow up the Bren that's slowly moving over. Was ready to support the Bren here with artillery. Tried to get these 2 flags. There's a Ratsveki, there's a Lati, so every vehicle has to be careful that moves closer. There's an MG also coming in, so firepower on the way for my opponent, but no anti-tank other than the Lati, so Stackhounds maybe could do well. L3 coming in for getting frontline radio. Meanwhile, in the south, push of my opponent, but I had a couple of armored vehicles and I had a couple of double Bren units here, so LMG wise I was overwhelming my opponent there. Though another heavy push through the forest. This was what I expected at the start. A Yakari push through the forest. It came now. And it was still scary. Commandosis around here. Bit too close. Especially the half-track. Getting hit by Panzerfaust. The Molotov also now coming in on my Commandosis. So they get shredded here. Should have disengaged earlier. Will get overrun. And I was under pressure here once more. 13-11 for me in the north, but the south was on the brink of collapse. Or at least I was outnumbered here once more. Not quite on the brink of collapse just yet, but a lot of forces of mine here getting killed off in the south. Meanwhile, see 205 making sure that no bomber can easily just hit me here. Artillery now coming in as support, hitting anything that we saw before. Also using smoke in case there comes up an AT gun in the rear so that my stack hounds can move over. I knew about the Lottie, but I didn't want to go in too deep there. But stack hounds moved close enough that they could hit the Lottie, and together with the German they dealt some nice damage so that the rest of the infantry could move over. But some rest of my artillery still kept on counter batterying. 155mm here getting hit hard. So 155mm of my opponent also hitting this time my bridgehead, and yeah, that's what I said. Bridgeheads are are not that easy to create. You can still do it though. Like, that's what I like about this map. It feels like you can do it. Like, other than Krupa where you only have 3 options, here you still can find a weakness in the enemy's line or can poke it there and then cross the river. On Krupa, this always feels kinda impossible once a game has, like, stabilized in Krupa. I like it way more here. Especially as you have different kinds of terrains around them as well. Like, here you can use a lot of infantry. Here you have 2000-meter range engagements. Here you have a mix. Here you have also an interesting mix. So, really enjoy that. Meanwhile, closing in on the 59, went over the bridge, but artillery still hitting my bridgehead. But I luckily killed off quite a lot of units here. So, a lot of T-26s and Ratsuvekis on the way. No smoke on these guns, but smoke would be up here to maybe allow to split off my infantry from my tanks so that the T-26s can first mop up the infantry, and then if the tanks get too close, maybe also kill off the tanks. So the 59 has been reached, and I was about to overtake Homer. Also 12-minute timer with still 20 minutes to go, possibly on the timer, but my artillery also really started to wreak havoc on the rear line, as I really had brought out a hell of a lot of artillery. Infantry now coming in the south to push back the carries, and Homer surrendered. He surrendered a bit preemptively because he didn't quite know about the rules of the tournament, in that it is a best of 2. He expected to lose here, and so he surrendered because he thought, okay, let's go to game number 3 fast. The issue is, there's no game number 3, because it's a Swiss-style tournament, so it's a best of 2. So now that it is 1-1, we split points in week number 1, and we will play against opponents that played similar in next week. So if there's another pair that had a tie in week number 1, we will play against those players. And yeah, this is my week number 1 in the May monthly tournament. I hope you enjoyed the cast. As you can see, I did a bit better for sure. And I had a really good breakthrough in the north. And I'm not sure he had any real options left on beating my Shermans and beating my artillery. I felt like my artillery really started to do the work there. 105mm really doing a good job. Though he had a lot of artillery guns maybe as well. Like, maybe he could have done it. Not a big fan of Raima Rapana still, as they just don't have the tools to dealing with armor really. And picking them first was a wild one. Yeah, he decided against them instead of 4 Fallschirmjäger. And don't know if I like 4 Fallschirmjäger too much on this map either, but might have been still the better pick. So yeah, still GGVP to Homer. We had 2 amazing games. I hope the rest of the May monthly tournament will be as tense for me as well. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this cast as well. And I have one more thing to show you guys, because there is the tournament coming up for Steel Division next weekend on the 14th, and that will be a fundraiser tournament for Action Against Hunger again. We did it last year and the year before, and we will do it this year again to support this amazing NGO. So if you're interested, you will be able to find all the information down in the description below. And yeah, on the 14th, will have a Steel Division Swiss style tournament for fun and trying to get the money together. A lot of other content creators will join me in covering it, and we will have a good time. And on the Sunday, we will have a similar tournament in Wano, and also some fun games and so on there as well. And if you have any ideas of how we maybe could make the rules even more fun or so, hit me up. Maybe some. Yeah, and if you want to support the fundraiser, you can also find all the information down below. And I hope to see you on that weekend live on Twitch. And yeah, see you all next time. Bye bye. Have a good day.